Hey everyone, this is Kevin from the chesswebsite.com, and today we're going to be starting a new series, a two-part series on the Evans Gambit, which comes from the Giocco piano. So we'll go ahead and get into it. Starts with pawn to e4, pawn e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. And this is the Giocco piano right now, and if you've watched the video, you know that white would like to bring his pawn to c3 and eventually bring his pawn to d4, attacking the center. But in the Evans Gambit, we're first going to play pawn to b4, and like any other gambit, we're going to offer up material, in this case a pawn on b4, in exchange for rapid and aggressive development that you'll see later on here. Now black has two options. He can accept or he can decline. In this two-part series, we're going to be going over the accepted line, since it happens way more often than decline lines. So we're going to be going over the accepted line, which is bishop takes on b4, and now pawn to c3. And there's three lines that we're going to go over. The first is if the bishop retreats to e7, if he comes back to c5, and if he goes back to a5. These are the three main responses you're going to see from black once you play c3. So we're going to take a look at those. The main thing you want to know, we're going to be going over concepts. We are going to be going over specific main lines. But just know that if you play the Evans Gambit, there's a lot of different variations. So as long as you know the concepts of these, you'll be okay no matter what your opponent throws at you. But the first line we are going to look at is if the bishop moves back to e7. From here, white's going to continue up the board with pawn to d4. Now there's two things black can do here. If black tries to capture on d4 and we recapture, as you can see, we already have compensation for our pawn. We're down in material, yes, one pawn, but we have great center control. Our pieces are developed that are controlling the center. Our other pieces can get into the action very quickly and controls the center as well. This is completely fine for white. But let's say black tries to hold on to the center by playing a move like d6, very common move that people like to support this pawn on e5, but at the same time they want to have center control. As you can see here, black has a little more center control than he did before if he captured on d4. From here, instead, we're going to disregard this pawn on e5, and we're going to bring our queen to b3. The Evans Gambit, the queen on b3 is a very strong move because our bishop is now eyeing down this f7 square. The f7 square, as y'all probably heard me talk about, is a very key weakness in any opening, especially against black, especially during the Evans Gambit. We're eyeing down this f7 pawn. If you can get your queen to b3, a lot of times it's very good depending on black's structure. Right here, it's a very good place for the queen to be. Another thing you want to see in the Queen's Gambit is to have your queen on a3. A lot of times you can keep black from castling kingside. Right now, it wouldn't do any good, but later on in different lines you'll see the bishop on a3 can a lot of time keep the black king from castling, which is really what we want to do. In the Evans Gambit, you want to make sure that the king is being harassed the entire game and he can't have any safety. So from here, you may see a couple things. If black would really like to move something like knight to a5, again, we are attacking this f7 pawn, so he would really like to have some counterplay. One of the counterplays he could have is knight to a5, attacking our queen, but this actually won't work. We can now come with bishop to f7. Now when he brings his king to f8, now we have to move our queen. He's being attacked, obviously. So we can bring our queen to a4, and once he captures our bishop and we recapture his knight, as you can see, we're even in material now, but his king can't castle. His king's out in the open. This is going to be very good for white, not going to be very good for black. So let's return to the original position. As we can see in this particular line, knight to a5 is not very good. He would like to defend this f7 pawn, but a move like knight to h6 doesn't work, because now we can bring our bishop, capture, and once he recaptures, now we can safely take on f7. He can't move a move like d7 because it would be checkmate with our queen here on e6. His only move is f8, and now we can bring our bishop back to h5, and you can see the threats that we have. The king is wide open, there's no protection. We're threatening mate in 1, queen to f7. White's going to have a very good game. If we ever needed to, we can castle, have king safety. All of our pieces are working here together. and the black king is going to have a hard time not losing this game. So if you see the black bishop move back to e7, there's going to be two things that's going to happen. One, you're either going to have great center control and compensation for the pawn you gave up, or two, if he tries to hold on to it with a move like pawn to d6, then instead you're going to be able to just continuously harass this f7 square. But again, like we said before, he doesn't have to move to e7. One of the most common moves that you will see after b4 and he captures and we play c3 is bishop back to a5. And then here we're going to continue up the board with pawn to d4. And now let's say he captures on d4. Now we're going to bring our king, castle kingside. We can't take with our pawn because our king was pinned down from this bishop here. Now if black continues to try to take up pawns, we're now going to bring our bishop to b3. Again, a very important square for our bishop. And now if you look at it, we're attacking this f7 pawn. At the same time, we now have two attackers attacking this c3 pawn, our knight and our queen. Now let's say black tries a move like queen to f6, trying to hold on to this pawn, and at the same time hold on to this pawn on f7. If he doesn't defend this pawn, we're going to be able to not only develop a piece, but take back in material, and we're going to have a lot of active pieces with our knight on b3. So he would like to try a move like queen to f6, defending this pawn, but from here we can bring our pawn to e5. He can't recapture with his queen because we have our knight here on f3, and he can't capture with his knight because then we can bring our rook to e1, pinning this knight down to the king. He can't move his knight, and if he tries to move like pawn to d6, defending this knight, now we can bring our queen to a4, attacking the king, and at the same time attacking this bishop. This is going to be very good. We're going to be up in material, and it's going to be very good for white, not so good for black. Now the queen doesn't have to come to f6. A lot of times you may see a move like queen to e7. Again, defending this pawn on f7 and just giving back this pawn on c3. From here, white can continue development and taking pawns back with knight to c3. Now as you can see, black is under a lot of pressure, and what he'd really like to do is castle to get his king to safety. So what he was going to do from here is move his knight to f6. Logical move. If he brings it to h6 and we capture, his king's no longer safe. And he can't move it to e7 because his queen's there. Logical move for him is to move his knight to f6, so next move he can castle kingside. From here, we're going to threaten that. We want to make sure that he doesn't castle on the king side. So we're going to bring our knight to d5. Now let's say we're attacking his queen, so he has to move his queen. If he moves his queen and captures on e4, then he's going to have a really hard time dealing with a move like knight to g5. We're attacking his queen. He can't bring his queen back to e6 or e7 because of our knights. Next move, we can come in, capture on f7. Then we can move our knight, discovered attack. There's a lot of different things that that white can do here that are very good for white and very bad for black. If he doesn't move his queen, let's say instead he challenges this knight here. Let's say he takes it with his knight. We can recapture with our pawn attacking this knight. This knight doesn't really have anywhere to go. If his knight comes here, we can now bring our rook to e1, pinning the queen down to the king. He would like to leave this square open for his bishop to eye down on the e1 square. Can't move his knight there. If he brings his knight to d4, we're just simply going to take it with our knight. His other move, let's say he brings it to knight to d8. If he comes knight to d8, then we can bring our bishop to a3, attacking the queen and forcing him to make a decision. As you can see here, we have all our pieces developed and ready to get into the action. And if you look at black, he looks very cramped. His knight's on the back row, his bishop's not doing anything, his rook's not doing anything, he's not castled, and all our pieces are eyeing down on black. And we can get our rooks into the game. This is going to be very good for white. This is why we give up material in the beginning, because now we have a huge developmental advantage, and now we a lot of times can have an easy one from here. Thanks for watching part 1 of the Evans Gambit. Definitely make sure you check out part 2 of the Evans Gambit. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you haven't checked out the website, www.thechesswebsite.com, definitely check that out. Everyone, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next video.